Hey everyone. Um, just wanted to give a quick shout out to some of the people who are part of the Devon Doughnut Collective. I'm recognizing lots of names: Maisie, Jill, Roxy, Jay, Daphne, Chris, Joseph. So it's really great that I think in these kinds of forums, there's much more overlap than there ever used to be. Also, Isabel is co-founder, co-director of the Bioregional Learning Center. So she's my partner in crime along with Nick, and she will be chipping in as I go through this quickly, adding anything that I've forgotten. So I am going to share my screen, hopefully. Let's see. Is that working?
That's working, Jane.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to go to present format. How's that?
Perfect.
Good?
Perfect.
Okay, great. So obviously this is a policymakers summit, so we wanted to just ground our work, even though it is pro bono volunteer work over many months now. Well, not that many, actually. We've made incredible progress, but just wanted to ground it in the context of policy. So Paris Accord, SDGs, the government's legally binding commitment to carbon reduction, declarations of carbon emergency, climate emergency, and Devon Carbon Plan. So in that context, in the context of policy, we saw the opportunity to make a Devon Doughnut. And the reason there is because we felt as though the opportunity was for all of us, for the whole of Devon, to see how we're faring ecologically and economically in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss. So we began with a question: could the donut help to provide a picture of how we're doing? And would this be useful to people living and working here? And if so, how and to do what? So we came at it with a very open-minded attitude that this could be a tool that could help all of us, policymakers and citizens. So super quick recap, the donut. What is it? What does it show? It's a visual framework. You can see the picture on the left there is highlighting the social foundation in relation to the ecological ceiling and showing that what we're after is the safe and just, I can't remember, I can't see the, hang on. Safe, there we go. Safe and just space for humanity. And that's what we are collectively aiming for. So it's really a symbol, the donut diagram at least. It's like a snapshot or a selfie showing how well a particular place or community is doing socially and environmentally. Oopsie, hang on one second. So who's making donuts internationally? So this is, it's really taken off. Amsterdam, Scotland, Brussels, Cornwall, leading the way. There are many other donut groups who are active. It's really a tool for seeing systems. So it acts like a compass, I guess, for deciding what's useful for a particular place to know. And it raises lots of questions, which offers the opportunity for citizens to get really involved in discussing all of this. And the image there is of the Cafe Disruptive's donut hack in Cornwall. So when a donut is filled in, it really provides kind of a baseline for the here and now, but it also has the potential to help bring about innovation. And we think that that innovation can come from citizens. So as I said, it's really taken off, the donut. It's been a very fast evolutionary process, even though Kate Raworth, I guess, has been talking about this for the past 10 years or more. But here are just a few examples of the different donut flavors, if you like. The original donut, the Maori, the decision wheel in Cornwall and Amsterdam. But a process has begun here in Devon. Whoopsie, there we go. to create a Devon Doughnut. And that kicked off, as was mentioned before, at the Regenerate Devon Summit. So far, we've had 2 series of open to all sessions called Coffee and Donuts. We've got about 70 or more change makers who participate in that process. And we call ourselves the Devon Doughnut Collective. So what could a Devon Doughnut look like? It might look like this. What you see here is a donut ring that highlights the concept of a space for revitalization. So the challenge for all of us is, how can we turn that space, that ring, from red to green? So in one picture, you get to see the ecological ceiling in relation to the social foundation at all times. So there are many different domains within that. But the basic idea is to create one picture so that we can all see how Devon is falling short, but also the Devon that we want to see, one that's thriving within limits. So we have the frame. These are sort of the components we've been working on over the past few months. We have a frame that we're calling Space for Revitalization, that offers the opportunity to show improvement, what's working well, maybe start to think about the future woodlands, future tourism, future circular economy. What is it that we want to see? And perhaps embedded in this is a form of dashboard that allows the donut to show that change over time. We have domains. We looked very closely at the other donuts, the domains that the other donut groups have developed. And we've made a few changes here. So you can see on the right, there's a comparison table, and on the left are the Devon Doughnut domains. So, for example, we felt that given the nature of this place, it was pretty important that we changed the name for, I'm trying to find it. Anyway, we created one domain, which is coast and marine health, greenhouse gas emissions, water body health, soil health. Those are all within the ecological ceiling. And what you see in pink, nature on the social foundation side, plastic pollution and waste, are the domains that we have added. I'm trying to rush through this, so there's so much to say, but I'll try to just keep going. We have an indicator strategy. So our indicator strategy is based on creating scenarios for indicators that are very place-based. And then following the scenarios, there are pathways to action that we can create collaboratively. So here's one example, which is education. So we think we need to be quite sort of specific, really dig into what these indicators could be used for, not to have indicators that are abstract or difficult to relate to. So in this instance, we're suggesting the number of hours per week that young people in Devon have guided interaction with nature. So along with that would be a scenario, and the scenario might start out something like falling attainment within schools correlates to the rise of mental health issues for young people and a lack of time in nature. So underneath that umbrella of education and that indicator, what we're seeing is the opportunity to share between citizens and policymakers the work of creating pathways to action to improve that status. So in order to do that, we're thinking that there would be a citizen-led threshold and a policy-making threshold. And I'm not sure if I've got time to really get into the detail of this, but for each of them, there would be a boundary. And what we mean by a boundary is what we're aiming for. So we're essentially aiming for, a high number of pupils and a high number of pupils and parents who advocate for this. And then there would be a current value and trend, which is reflecting the situation right now, which would likely be a much lower number. So what we want to see is a rise in that towards what we want to see. Similarly, on the policy-making threshold, it might be a slightly different boundary. So on the policy-making threshold, it would be X percent of young people of school age prescribed by the NHS with time in nature at no or low cost. And we can see that situation is failing or worsening. So we need to bolster that so that it reaches the boundary for that indicator. I hope this is making sense. It's a little rushed.
Yeah, Jane, I think is wonderful, and it just shows the amount of thinking and the complexity that you're trying to kind of include us in. Maybe this is a good moment for you to wrap up with the very most things that feel most important for us to know to go into the collaborative sessions. If you could focus on that, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. So just to say, we're on a roll. Invitation to a wider circle of Devon's policymakers. What do you think it's important to measure? That's where we started, and we need to open up that question to more policymakers. So we already have a big list. Really, when you dive into these issues, what are the things that resonate with people? What do people really want to know? Number of hospital beds in Devon, for example, would be important, particularly with the recent COVID crisis. So maybe there's one frame that we can create with different ways of working. Citizens kind of work in one way, policymakers work in another, but we can all pool together relative to particular indicators. So the next steps that we see, at least, let's create a joined up policy that integrates with a joined up picture of Devon. And we think that the donut can help provide that picture.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. And I just want to say everyone's really welcome to join the coffee and donut sessions that you have going on every other Monday. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
That would be one place to dive in deeper into this work and build it out. Just the question that Jan posed around how can local smaller councils adopt this framework. Is there anything that you would like to add to what Jane just mentioned?
Thanks. I think, yeah, I mean, I wrote it in the chat as well, but I think really the fundamental thing with the Devon, with any kind of donut process is the mentality shift. It's about linking together what has been always viewed as separate into a kind of bigger picture of seeing how things, any one decision within any one sector is going to affect lots of other sectors. And so as soon as you start to look at the kind of systemic implications of those decisions, immediately also solutions become clear. So, a bit like, any indicator that we're looking at, just like the example that Jane gave in terms of education. And as soon as you start thinking, okay, well, what would be the implications of taking children out into nature? Well, actually, those implications go far beyond just mental health. So what the donut provides is a kind of introduction or an entryway into systems thinking, which in itself can be incredibly complex and hard for people to get their heads around. But when you have this kind of simple graphic tool, which enables people to kind of map out how those different indicators or different spheres or sectors actually do relate to one another, then the kind of those practical steps are kind of implicit within that. They, you start thinking, okay, well, how could I do something that's positive to air quality? And then you go, pretty soon you're realizing actually you're affecting water quality, and you're affecting biodiversity, and you're affecting education. And then when you start thinking, well, how could I maybe also then bring gender equality into it? Then you start to see how the kind of pathways to practical action are actually, really kind of alive when you start to look at that whole picture. So that's what I find really inspiring on a policy level as well, and always kind of bringing it back to examples of things that are happening now, and Cornwall's decision donut or decision wheel that they've using is already in their sort of first, almost, it's kind of prototyping, but it's been maybe going for about a year, but it's showing them already, whenever they're making decisions and referring to their decision wheel, they're needing to look for data for a whole host of things, and look for the what are going to be the implications of their decisions. And the mentality shift that brings means that the kinds of policies they're then bringing forward are coming from a very different place from if you're just thinking of one thing within one sector, within one silo. And then once that mentality shift begins, then it's just endless where that can go.
Thanks for that contribution. That's really good. So that sets up really nicely, because this summit is about creating those connections between traditionally separate policy areas of jobs, health, carbon, and equality. So